Magandang umaga Pilipinas! Magandang umaga Camarines Norte! Narito na ang ating news update sa mga oras na ito. Matagumpay ang Solid Waste Management Law Enforcement and Post-Disaster Solid Waste Management Training ng provincial government sa pamamagitan ng Provincial Environment and Natural Resources Office of PG Penro sa tulong ng Environmental Management Bureau o AMB5 mula sa Regional Office na ginanap sa Audiovisual Room, Provincial Capital, Daet, Camarines Norte, itong February 22, 2023. Ito'y matapos na maraming participants ang dumalo at maraming kaalaman ang kanilang natutunan sa topic na tinalakay ng dalawang speakers mula sa Regional Office ng ANP na sina Attorney John Eric Tizon at Senior Environmental Management Specialist Carlo Lorenzana. Bago nagsalita ang dalawang speakers, ipinaliwanag muna ni Penro Engineer Leopoldo P. Bardiola ang overview ng training.
Inyo po lahat sa ating po mga bisita kay Attorney Tizon and Sir Carlo Lorenzana from ENB sa Regional Office, sa inyo pong lahat, sa head ng PEMO, kay Engineer Jazz, mga members at mga MDRRMOs, and also sa mga kasamahan ko sa PWG sa Provincial Solid Waste Management Board. Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. Salamat po sa pagpaunlak sa aming imbitasyon. Ito pong seminar natin for the whole day ay result ng ilang discussion. Halos 2 quarters po itong pinag-usapan sa Provincial Solid Waste Management Board, and finally na-schedule natin. Last December na-discuss din po itong 2 topic na ito, na-discuss ang Solid Waste Management Law Enforcement at ganoon din ang Post-Disaster Solid Waste Management. So last January ay nag-request po ang ating punong lalawigan, Governor Ricardo Padilla, kay Director Abu. At fortunately, nandito na nga po tayo. Napaunlakan po ang request ng ating punong lalawigan. Agad na nag-assign po si Director Abu at na-schedule natin itong 1-day seminar. So yan po yung pinakakabuuan.
Unang nagsalita sa topic nitong Post-Disaster Solid Waste Management ay Senior Environmental Management Specialist Carlo Lorenzana. Bago siya pumunta sa topic ay kanya munang ipinaabot ang mainit na congratulations sa provincial government ng Camarines Norte dahil sa pagkaka-approve ng 10-year Solid Waste Management Plan. Ayon sa kanya, nainggit daw ang iba dahil naunahan ng lalawigang ito ang ibang probinsya.
So first, I would like to congratulate the provincial government of Camarines Norte and the other LGUs for the approved 10-year solid waste management plan. So actually, namumuna na po yung Camarines Norte sa Bicol in terms of the approval of plan.
Sa pasimula sa pagtalakay ni Lorenzana sa kanyang topic, Post-Disaster Solid Waste Management, kanyang binigyan din na hindi siya ang eksperto dito at ang LGU umano ang eksperto dahil sa kanilang experience in terms of disaster risk management. Kanyang sinabi na bagamat alam ng lahat na may disaster, pero hindi daw ito lumalabas sa disaster plan o disaster solid waste management at kahit sa 20 years ng batas, ang RA 9003 ay hindi raw ito nag-appear. Ayon kay Lorenzana, sa kanyang paghahanap ng guidelines, basis or post-disaster solid waste management, walang lumalabas na related laws sa local level o walang sinusunod na standards maging sa framework ng National Solid Waste Management ay hindi rin daw ito nabanggit.
Technically, alam naman natin na nangyayari yung disaster palagi dito sa atin, pero hindi siya masyadong dinidiscuss. Actually, when I try to look for basis, mga guidelines on post-disaster waste management or disaster solid waste management, mga related laws, walang nag-a-appear sa local level. For example, sa Philippines, walang sinusunod na standard on the disaster waste management. when I tried to look on the framework ng solid waste, National Solid Waste Management Framework, di siya na-mention.
Ipinaliwanag din ito kung anong basura ang may ipon sa panahon ng kalamidad at kung sino-sino ang maaapektuhan nito.
Iba't ibang disaster, iniipon niya lahat ng klase ng basura. Okay. So it's very important that you must know during normal times, ano po bang mga mabasurang ma-generate nyo in terms tamaan kayo ng disaster. Example, typhoon. Sino-sino bang maapektuhan at ano po bang mga basura ang ma-generate? Sa iba kasing LGU, geotag na nila mga commercial or residential buildings. And they try to determine ano ang composition ng mga building na yon. So that for example, tamaan ng cyclone, alam nilang area kung saan ma-generate pinakamadami ang wood, green waste, so sa mga pag tinamaan ng commercial, anong specific waste ang ma-generate.
Ayon pa sa kanya, dapat maalis kaagad ang basura at dapat ang best practices ay mayroong temporary separation sites.
Dumping in appropriate areas and or proliferation of scattered dump sites. So, this has potential human health and injury risk from dump sites too close to settlements, especially from hazardous materials, destruction of valuable land, impacts on drinking water supplies, and damage to valuable fisheries. And additional cost if waste must be moved later. Increase in disease, vectors, flies, mosquitoes, rats, risk of waste piles collapsing, and risk of fires, risk of cuts from sharp materials including used syringes. Kaya po, usually sa disaster, ano po talaga is dapat ma-remove po talaga ang basura immediately sa mga area. Kaya po, it always look for best practice po talaga na meron kayong temporary separation site.
Samantala, bago naman formal na tinalakay ni Attorney Tizon ang kanyang topic, Solid Waste Law Enforcement, ipinaabot muna nito ang kasiyahan at appreciation sa provincial government sa inisyatibo ng ganitong training sa pamamagitan ng PG Penro.
We really appreciate the initiative of the provincial government, and so I think it's worth it kahit malayo yung biyahe namin. Dito kami as a form of our commitment in behalf of our regional director, Engineer Maria Socorro A. Abu, our commitment as partners in the implementation and enforcement of our topic this afternoon, RA 9003, Ecological Solid Waste Management Act of 2000. So,
Samantala, sinimulan ni Atty. Tizon na pagdalakay sa kanyang topic sa pamagitan ng pagtatanong kung ano ang pagkakaiba ng implementation at enforcement at subalit sa huli. Kanya itong ipinaliwanag at nagbigay pa ng mga halimbawa upang mas lalo pang maintindihan ng mga participants.
this afternoon, my discussion will focus on the implementation and enforcement of RA 9003, including its implementing rules and regulations. Okay. So, before we proceed with our discussion, I'd like to evaluate first. Samahan niyo akong evaluate and understand the nuances of the terms. Implementation and enforcement. Is there a difference between these terms? Meron ba? Kasi diba, we're fond of using synonymous terms, di ba? Na they mean similar things, pero ginagamit natin yung two terms at the same time. Is there a difference between implementation and enforcement? And most importantly, what is the relevance in knowing this difference? Okay, siguro let's cite an example. When we conduct an information education campaign, is that implementation or enforcement? Correct. When we conduct closure of dump sites, is that implementation, enforcement?
Enforcement.
Okay. It could be or, diba? Tingnan natin. What about when we apprehend violators. Is that enforcement or implementation?
Enforcement.
Okay. So there is a difference. And sabi, kapag we're putting in action those requirements of the law, that's implementation. So titingnan natin, ito ba ay requirements of the law? If we put that in action, if we're referring to activities, that's implementation. But if you're talking about measures, mechanisms to ensure that a person will be compelled to follow or comply with the law, that's enforcement. What are the examples? Apprehension, issuance of notice of violation, filing of a case in court, filing of a case before the LGU for violation of ordinance. That's enforcement. Okay. So we come now doon sa second aspect. What's the relevance in knowing the differences of these terms? Okay? So alam na natin yung pagkakaiba nila. Ba't natin kailangan malaman? The importance is for us to evaluate saan tayo magaling, saan tayo nag-fail. This afternoon, may
Sunod dito ay kanyang inisa-isang outlines ng kanyang discussion. Challenges sa implementation at enforcement, purpose ng RA 9003, penal provisions, fines and penalties, enforcement mechanism, citizen suit, SLAP suit at pointers for effective implementation and enforcement. Mas naging masiglahan talaga yan ang sinimulang ipaliwanag ni Tizon ang tungkol sa mga prohibited acts o mga pinagbabawal na gawain at parusa sa ilalim ng Section 48 ng naturang batas.
First, ito yung code natin, the nature of offense, amount of fine or penalty, and community service or imprisonment. If it's littering, the violation or offense is littering, throwing or dumping of waste matters in public places, the amount of fine is not less than 300, not more than 1,000, or render community service for 1 day and not more than 15 days. So may alternative, ano? Pwedeng community service or a fine. Okay. Walang imprisonment muna. But for operating, collecting, transporting, equipment in violation of sanitation, operation, and other requirements or permits, not less than 300 pesos, not more than 1,000 pesos the penalty. This time, meron na siyang imprisonment of not less than 1 day to not more than 15 days or both. For collection of non-segregated waste, squatting, open dumping, and authorized removal of recyclable material, the penalty is not less than 1,000, not more than 3,000, and or imprisonment of 15 days but not more than 6 months or both. Next, please. Mixing, operation of open dumps, importation or manufacture of non-environmentally acceptable packaging materials, there is a fine of not less than 500,000 pesos plus the amount of 5% to 10% of the annual income with or imprisonment of 15 days, what's 15 yata ito, to 3 years at the discretion, take note of the term discretion of the court. And for importation of toxic waste, transport and dumping of waste to areas other than the prescribed facilities, there is a penalty of fine, the amount of not less than 10,000 to 200,000 pesos, with imprisonment of not less than 30 days to 3 years or both. Okay. Implementation of waste management facilities without an ECC, meron din ang penalty 100,000 pesos. Well, 100 to 1,000 pesos, and imprisonment of not less than 1 year but not more than 6 years or both. Ay kung paano siya enforce. I think yun yung pinaka-question ninyo. Meron na tayong prohibited acts, meron na penalties. Paano ba yan enforce, attorney? Okay, dito na tayo to answer your question. Sa enforcement mechanisms, okay, we have administrative action. Okay, bago tayo mag-proceed, i-ano ko lang yung baka iniisip ninyo na the only way to enforce the law is by way of filing a criminal action sa court. Hindi. Huwag tayong masyadong mag-deal doon. There are other measures on how to enforce the law. Ito yung mga mekanismo na binigay ng batas. Paano yung ma-enforce? So number 1 dyan ay through an administrative action. And when we're talking about administrative action, meron niya na, it could be by filing a complaint or a case before the DENR or the EMB. Pag administrative action, wala po yan ang imprisonment. Ang meron dyan ay sanctions, could be penalties in the form of fine and other sanctions. Yeah. What else? At commencement of an action for violation of an ordinance. Yan, very important. I think, I would suggest na dito tayo mag-focus dito sa commencement of an action for violation of ordinance. Saka lang natin explore yung possibility of filing a case in court. Kapag hindi natin nakukompel despite yung pag-file natin ng administrative action. Okay? Malinaw? Sige. Commencement of an action before the ombudsman. Ayan, na-papyaw na natin.
Binigyan din ng abogado ang pointers for effective implementation ng RA 9003.
Pointers for the effective implementation and enforcement of RA 9003. You can add a lot of inputs on this based on your experiences. Sila sir, maraming mga diba sir, maganda yung ninyo So, pwede kayong maglagay dito ng mga pointers, additional pointers. But this is my list. So, number 1, good planning. Kay Sir Carlo kanina, kung nakinig tayo, paulit-ulit until the last part of his discussion, nakalagay doon yung planning. Paano yung strategy natin sa pag-implement ng solid waste management plan natin? Sa first year niya, ano yung gagawin natin? Sa second year niya, ano ang gagawin natin? Next question. Gaano ka sound or feasible yung mga strategy natin? Baka kasi, meron nga tayong plan, hindi naman sound or feasible. On paper, maganda. Okay? Pero, unrealistic, hindi feasible. So, we need to have the right balance. Huwag naman sobrang ambitious na hindi na realistic. Okay. Budget or fund. Okay. Dapat meron po tayong appropriation. Mag-allocate tayo ng sufficient fund to implement and enforce yung ating plan. Appropriation ng sufficient fund for the implementation and enforcement of SWMP. Lahat ng programs natin dapat may pondo yan. Okay. What else? We have, next piece, identify key challenges ginawa na natin. I am encouraging you na gawin nyo din on your level, on your end. Identify what are the key challenges. Pag na-identify natin yon, ang next natin na gagawin, how to solve it. And, of course, legislate appropriate ordinance. And, very important, procedure for enforcement. So, wag natin kalimutan na after this, evaluate natin. Kumpleto ba ang enforcement procedure doon sa ordinance? Kung kulang pa, perhaps you could suggest for an amendment para lang maging tama yung proseso. Okay, what else? Strict enforcement, consistency lang naman dyan. Commitment natin. Kasi kung merong batas at wala naman ang proper implementation, strict implementation, that's useless. And lastly, capability trainings. Environmental officers must be equipped with the necessary trainings and skills. So again, itong activity natin, i-document natin, and hopefully, sir, madagdagan pa yung mga ganitong similar activities ninyo. I would suggest next time, you invite somebody from the prosecutor's office, somebody from the enforcement mga from the PNP. Kasi sa ibang LGU, sila talaga yung deputized, sabi ni sir. So, we have to invite them.
Isa rin sa binigyang emphasis ay ang huling tanong kung pwedeng kasuhan ang mga barangay official na nagpapabaya sa pagkolekta ng basura sa mga kabahayan bilang bahagi ito ng kanilang tungkulin sa ilalim ng RA 9003.
Ang masuggest natin dyan ay siguro bisitahin ng membro yung barangays nila. Kung ginagawa pa nila ng tama ang trabaho nila. Ngayon, kung wala pa rin, go ahead, file a case, pwedeng sa office namin. I-issuehan natin sila ng notice of violation. Ang ginagawa po namin sa office, kapag na-issue namin ng notice of violation, ako, minimake sure ko na dapat may immediate na yun, may development, may progress. Pinapasubmit ko yan ng report, yung mga barangay na yan, like may maliit sila doon, open dam site. Papasubmitin ko yan ng report, in 30 days or 15 days you have to submit report. na naayos mo na yung problema. Pag hindi mo pa yan maayos, mag-uusap tayo ng other measures na pwedeng gawin.
Sa huli-muling nagpasalamat si Atty. Tizon sa pagtanggap sa kanila dito sa Camarines Norte.
I reiterate ko po yung commitment ng aming opisina in behalf po ng aming regional director, yung commitment namin sa LGUs as partners in the implementation and enforcement of RA 9003 for us to have a clean environment na napaprioritize po yung public health din ng ating communities. Okay. So thank you very much and sa mga kagkas ng hapon po.
Okay, salamat kay Attorney John Eric Tizon. Muli po palagpakan natin si Attorney. Very informative.
Samantala sa pagtatapos ng training, nagpasalamat naman ang mga participants sa provincial government, PG Penro at sa mga speakers mula sa AMB5 dahil marami umano silang natutunan na kanilang magagamit sa pagtupad ng kanilang tungkulin sa ilalim ng RA 9003, otherwise known as the Solid Waste Management Act of 2000. Ang isa sa nagpapasalamat ay si Dr. Pagirigan.
Maganda po yung output lalo na po dun sa implementation and enforcement kasi na-detalye naman po kung ano yung dapat na gawin ng LGU, ng barangay at ng environmental enforcers at the same time yung mga violators natin. So talagang continuous, easy and also first offense and notice of violation and then saka natin i-penalize, saka natin bigyan ng filing of cases.
In short po, marami kayong natutunan dito?
Yes po. Siyempre.
Okay. Sige, Doc, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you din pala sa Penro at saka sa ating mga speakers from Legazpi City pa. Si Attorney, saka si Sir Carlo.
Okay, thank you. Samantala, binigyan ng Certificate of Appreciation at souvenir ang dalawang speakers na sina Atty. John Eric Tizon at Senior Environmental Management Specialist Carlo Lorenzana. Lahat ng participants na karamihan ay Menro, ilang kawani ng DNR at Provincial Government ay binigyan naman ng Certificate of Participant na nilagdaan na Provincial Environment and Natural Resources Officer Engineer Leopoldo P. Badiola at Camarines Norte Governor Ricarte R. Padilla.
Para i-award na po natin itong Certificate of Appreciation sa ating pong dalawang speakers. Ito po yung citation. The Provincial Government of Camarines Norte, Provincial Environment and Natural Resources Office or PG Penro. Certificate of Appreciation is hereby awarded to natin po kay Sir Carlo A. Lorenzana for sharing his expertise and knowledge as resource person in the solid waste management law enforcement and post-disaster solid waste management training or seminar on February 22, 2023 at Audiovisual Room, Provincial Capital Dalit, Camarines Norte, given this 22nd day of February 2023 at Provincial Capital Dalit, Camarines Norte. Signed, Engineer Leopoldo P. Badiola, Penro, and ang ating Honorable Governor, Ricarte R. Padilla. Palagpagan po natin si Sir Carlo Lorenzana. Bibigyan pa yata, maliban dyan si Carlo. May iba pang souvenir yan. Wala dyan kay Engineer Badiola. Okay? Okay, sir. Thank you. And another certificate of appreciation is hereby awarded to Attorney John Eric Tizon. Thank you, Attorney. Thank you very much po. And the certificate of participation na po. Tuloy-tuloy na at para tayo. Okay, bago yung group daw po muna. Angelica Bara. Reyes, engineer. Jennifer Francisco.
Yan po ba yan ang ating news update sa mga oras na ito. Ako po ang lalaking hindi mayaman pero may palasyo naman. Si Kuya Rick Palacio Jr. nagpapasalamat. Nag-iwan ng isang maikling kasabihan, ang taong may mabuting kalooban, pinagpapala ng puong may kapal.